Okay, well, the topic for today is around good stress and bad stress, and basically the concept is trying to figure out your sweet spot because, frankly, a little stress is fine. Too much stress is bad. So we're just going to kind of have a conversation. There's no like solid information that's like, well, you have got to have X number of stress, or you're no, you're not pushing yourself. But it's more of you got to kind of find the sweet spot for you. So I completely started without doing our introductions.
I was
So
going to jump in there and tell you.
all right, well, go ahead or I can do introductions. So this is welcome to Ketonian Korner. We've got basically, I've already kind of outlined what we're going to be talking about today. But basically, we feel free to ask questions as we go. This is meant to be a conversation. And if you're listening to the recording later, obviously, you're just going to have to send in your questions, and we'll talk about all of the social media stuff at the end, right?
Right.
So I like to think about stress in this way. If you just kind of picture a left-right arrow, on the left is less stress, on the right more stress, and somewhere in the middle, if you think about maybe like a generic bell curve, is your performance. So with the less stress, I think some of the things that might be going through your head is, I'm bored, I am, I'm losing my attention. But on the more stressed, you kind of freak out and you crash and burn. So somewhere in the middle is this piece of I'm rocking it. And I'm kind of following along with an article and basing a lot of this conversation around an article from Precision Nutrition. It's just a website. And I thought they did a really good job of summarizing some of these topics. So the first thing I want to talk about is basically kind of understanding what some of your stressors are. So it kind of depends, right, on what is impacting your life at the particular time. So for me, I have two small children. Well, one's 2 and one's 4. So I get my share of stressors from them. And then you compound on top of that a 9-to-5 job where it's not 9 to 5 and you've got projects that are critical. So what happens is that level of stress, if you think of like a bank account, those type of things detract from my total stress level. So what you have to start to think about is, if you want to balance your stress, if you have a high level of stress at home and at work, then you may not be able to give yourself a high level of output at the gym, because when you think about things at the gym and massive changes to your eating, those are also stresses. So basically what you need to do is kind of think about how your life fits as a pie and looking at your total stress. And then you need to start figuring out, maybe you need to govern up and down changes to your eating and or changes to the amount of exercise you're doing based on the level of stress in the rest of your life. So basically, what we're thinking about is finding some type of zone you're comfortable with. So to kind of put this into some practices that you can identify. We've talked about the strong lift program before and lifting heavy in the gym. Recovery, we've also talked about. So you might find that it takes you a couple days to recover, but then based on where you're at in your fitness journey, you might hit a situation where it continues to take a long time for you to recover. And if that's the case, you need to start thinking about what are those other things in your life that may be those levels of stress. Because there's points in my career where my workload was so crazy and everything else was so crazy, I needed to back off or reduce the amount of of change around maybe exercise to fit that. So other negative things that would be like trigger points. To finish kind of drilling in the point on that lifting and not recovering, that would be you continue to feel weak, or you just feel like you're just not recovering like you normally do. But signs like in your daily your everyday would be like distracted. You feel like you're not getting enough rest, or you're tired. So those are basically go in hand with spikes in cortisol and those type of things. Just a kind of side point. The reason why we're kind of talking about this is people who have a large amount of stress in their lives have a tendency to not gain muscle and maybe gain a little extra weight. And that's kind of anecdotal. I mean, it's not like proven or anything, but as your cortisol stays spiked, you tend to not be able to recover. Your blood sugar is impacted, your metabolism's impacted, and then all that compounds to you get less sleep, and it's a kind of a downward spiral. So the goal of this kind of conversation is taking a look at where you are on your stress curve and figuring out how you back it off, whether that be, backing off, the changes in your diet and or, how you are leveling. So let's maybe kind of give you a couple tools you can use to do that. I know it's not directly related to this particular topic, but I've been dabbling in meditation. So if you are following some of the other initiatives that are kind of underneath that small primal habits umbrella, you might have seen that we've got a get started with meditation, and I've found that meditation helps calm me. It kind of helps me be a little more stress resistant. All of that has to do with, believe it or not, some genes. And it's kind of summarizing it poorly, but there's a worrier versus a warrior gene. And I've actually done my DNA test, so I know I'm more of a warrior than a worrier. So stress kind of falls off me easier, I think, than maybe some people. So that's just like one factor that you can kind of look at to find out what your stress tolerance is. So my stress curve, I can handle a little more stress personally and still recover well. But I have found that meditation has shifted that to where I can almost handle a little bit more stress. And I know that sounds backwards, but basically what I'm trying to say is you'll find that through your life, whether that's changes in your at home, changes at work, changes in your in the type of work you're doing, can move that stress curve right and left. So if you're constantly being fatigued, not a good time to try to introduce, like for instance, a strong lift program. All right. So again, I'm going to talk a little bit about how you are in the right stress point. And basically, some of the characteristics I would describe if I was in it would be I feel energized. So, my diet and everything that's, happening, it just kind of comes all together. I feel energized, engaged. I feel like I'm actively moving towards my goals. I'm learning, I'm growing. All those things mean that I finally, or I'm kind of hovering around that sweet spot. So some things that you might be describing yourself if you are too low in stress is if you feel lethargic, you're bored, you're unfocused, you don't feel like you got purpose. All of those are triggers that would tell me that I need to either define some new goals. So in this instance, you're in a situation where maybe you want to look through our back catalog and pick up the Strong Lift program. You might want to look at some of on the website, the more information and go do some learning, those type of things, so you're not quite as you have too low a stress, then that will pull you more into the just right where you feel energized. Work's a little more difficult, right? Work, you could talk about the session this morning about work-life balance, but the bottom line is you may need to look at what you're working on, and if it really is none of it's very exciting, you either have to pull out and kind of figure out what things you can do that align with your purpose a little bit more that you can concentrate on. So I know that was a little vague, so let me go into an example. I've been working on my public speaking. At my job, I am a PM. I tend to have to communicate as concise and as fast as possible, and sometimes I get put on the spot. But the way I can handle that, or the way I can work on maybe pulling or reducing that stress and making myself more towards my goals, is saying I'm going to take Toastmasters. And Toastmasters is going to help me be more comfortable with the impromptu speaking, make me a little more concise, think about the audience, and those things pull me back. So my job might not be that exciting, but I found some synergies to where I can pull myself into the middle. The opposite side of that is that too stressed piece. And some trigger points that you would be telling yourself are, I feel anxious, I am like depressed, I just don't even know how to tackle. I've got so many critical issues. Which one do I look at first? I'm panicking. I'm kind of stuck. I don't know where to go. All those type of characteristics, if you're feeling that, are signs that you need to decrease your stress. So that would not be a good time to start a new exercise program. That would be a better time to say, what can I get off my plate? Those type of things. I see Heather McKay's on, and I'll just pitch a show that we recorded 2 years ago on minimalism, where I talked about we both talked about, but I mostly talked about how the stuff I owned started to own me. And when I looked at things a little differently with a different filter, that would be the total cost of ownership, which leads to my stress. I found that having 3 motorcycles was not beneficial to my life. Having these toys that I was, trying to maintain and keep up, all were making my life a little disorganized and then adding upon my stress. And we went into a lot more in that, so you can also find that in the back catalog. But those are signs that you're too stressed. So that's just a couple of examples. But whether you're on the left side or the right side, too little stress, too much stress, if you want to pull it in to find your sweet spot, I'm going to kind of steal from that some presentations that we've given lately about kind of looking at your goals. Every person has got some things they're working on. Some of it's at home, some of it's at work, some of it's on that. But there's all these big kind of, if you take your goals and you think you've got some big rocks, these big, huge ones, maybe long-term goals, 5-year out goals. I would hope you have a fitness goal that fits somewhere in that 5-year category. The point of these conversations are, we're not looking at a quick fix. We're looking at a real change over time, lifestyle change piece. So when you nail that down and you start to draw out your goals, I think you can do this at with work, without work, kind of just depends. You can start to take your stress as this overarching, big circle of all of your rocks. Look at the big ones and set some smaller goals. Look at your medium-sized ones and set some other goals. You're breaking down your goals into small actions. And for me, and I think everybody's slightly different, but for me, that really helps me manage my stress level. And that way, if it's a personal thing, like personal goals, like my family's goals, I can look at those, monthly, let's say. I'm just going to throw that out there. And then I can say, what am I going to do next month to work towards that? So for me personally, I'm trying to be more active in my children's lives because, as you get older, you start to notice that all of your friends' kids are going away to college, and I'm like, oh man, if I don't harvest this time with them now, I'm not going to be able to harvest it later. So those are some things that I make choices that decrease the amount of time I spend at the gym, and I've talked about this before, to kind of balance my overall stress load to make it in my sweet spot. So let's talk a little bit about that in detail, so maybe you can take away some action items for this. When I looked at my health goal, one of the first things I kind of said is, I started doing the gym because I was trying to lose weight, because I had picked up not a freshman 15, but I had picked up a corporate 15. So my first year at sitting behind a desk, I picked up like 15 pounds. I'm like, I don't want to do this. So I ratcheted way up my my activity level at the gym, so much that it probably didn't leave me a lot of personal time for family and friends. And that's okay, because at that point in my life, I didn't really have a huge family. But as I changed that, I started to look at my overall fitness, and I've gone over my Primal Blueprint Fitness Pyramid. If you want more information about that, there's a Getting Started with Exercise show we recorded that breaks down the details of that. But as I shifted to that, I realized if I did strong lift a few times a week, 2 to 3 times a week, if I removed some of these, unnecessary cardio classes and changed my diet, I got myself into a balancing act to where I started to be much more manageable, to where as I started a family, I reduced the goals revolving around the gym and increased the goals around my family, but still fit that into the same overarching amount of time. So I'm not like stealing from sleep to try to get that. I'm trying to tweak my goals to fit into how I wanted to lay that out. And does that kind of make sense? I know I'm kind of talking a little bit vague here, but in trying to use an example. Does anybody track goals on like a weekly basis or anything like that? Crickets. All right. Well, if you're cricketing, then I'm going to give you a couple steps so you can try to improve that. So think of something. It could be a big rock, a smaller rock, and then, but at least write down that goal. Make it, I'm going to get a little smart acronym on you, make it specific and measurable. And then if you need to break it down, if it's a big rock, break it down into some small rocks. So the example that I'm going to use through this is becoming more lean. So this example could go across anything, but the example I'm going to go through is I want to build more lean mass. So I'm going to decrease my level of fat in my body, and I'm going to increase my level of muscle. So for me, I'm going to say for the next year, I'm going to continue with my pyramid of fitness, and I'm going to lift heavy at least twice a week. I am going to do at least one session of HIIT style sprinting, something like that, once a week. And I am going to ratchet up my leisure exercise. And I define leisure exercise as the small stuff: walking with my kids, taking the dog for a walk, going to the pool and playing with them, those type of things where you're active, but you're not exercising active. So that's step one. I identified my goal, I made it measurable, and I kind of laid it out to what I projected it to be as an outcome. Step two is to break that down to what you're going to do in the next couple weeks. So that would be, for me, given my example, I kind of already went into that, but to kind of summarize, I would say I'm going to hit the gym on Monday and Wednesdays, and that's it. And then I'm going to try to do active stuff on the weekend and be a little more specific. I'm going to try that Saturday and Sunday, maybe after work this day and this day. But basically, you're kind of making it a little more actionable. And then step 3, obviously, would be tracking your progress. So it can be as simple as reviewing each week, a weekly review. You don't have to get out, MyFitnessPal and log in every single minute you do, every piece of each different types of fitness. But what you can do is a couple of different things. The goal for tracking progress, I think I want to kind of spend a little more time on that, because I think sometimes we don't give ourselves credit for, I think, the positive things. Because when we track progress, a lot of people automatically go to the scale. I want to forget about the scale and say, are you feeling different? Are you starting to look different? But then more specifically, if you're going to make it a weekly review, what did you learn? Because you might want to tweak that kind of number 2 of your plan for the following week. And then you might identify something that frustrates you, so you try to figure out, well, how I'm going to tackle that, because I don't want to add stress. But you need to kind of also think about is, man, I accomplished, a lot. I lifted heavy. I saw my, weight on my bar for squats go up 5 pounds. That's fantastic. And then my number 4 would be find an accountability partner. And if you have looked at the meditation stuff we've done, I think I might have called it an accountability buddy. Previously in this, we've talked about calling it different things, but pretty much whether that's a mentor or a coach, if you don't feel comfortable with what you're trying to do, or if it's, just somebody you want to text message every once in a while. Hey, I said I was going to go to the gym twice. Did you? So, for instance, I would be a horrible accountability buddy because I don't check messages or anything. But the point is, you find something. So just to kind of review really fast, you pick a particular goal. Depending on the size of your goal, you maybe break it down. That's step 1. You create your action plan of how you're going to tackle that. Track your progress. That's step 3. And then spend some time working with an accountability buddy. So the reason I mention all this is because if you start to look at your goals that way, you can start to pull that stress level in. So I think sometimes we don't realize the mental psyche, and this is I'm kind of summarizing the book Getting Things Done, which is the mental psyche that burns when you are thinking about those things. So an example would be, I am walking through my garage, and every time I walk through my garage, I think about, man, I need to clean this. But you don't think about it till the next time you walk through the garage. You just kind of get that stuff out. So you're not letting that stuff stress you. When you walk in your garage, you're like, that's on my to-do list. It's one of my goals, and I'm not going to look at that till next month when it's cold out and we're not doing things in the summer. That's just an example, but those are the type of things that you're trying to tackle. The next thing I would kind of break into is, once you got your kind of outline of how you're going to maybe pull in your stress by looking at your goals, is finding what your rest and relaxation is. I hope I'm not throwing my wife under the bus by saying she likes the downtime of watching, I call it mindless TV. But like, I just don't find myself to to enjoy much TV. I'll watch a show every once in a while, but to me, it doesn't give me any downtime. But for her, it does. So I think there's things that have surprised me about my rest and relaxation. Like, for example, I never thought I would like a massage. I never thought that I would meditate and that would make a difference. But once I found the right place to get a massage, and really it's not the place, it's the person. For me, being a sports guy, or not, I'm not even into sports. For me, being like a physical type guy, like I didn't realize that I needed a deep tissue, find somebody who concentrated on sports massages, and that's why I said sports. Not because I do sports, but because I happen to be what they call them. But that deep tissue piece, I had no idea that that would be relaxing. So now I've scheduled that on a monthly basis to where I have them come to the house and, make that part of my stress, tackling stress. So just to kind of throw out some examples I found on the website of those type of activities that might work for stress and recovery. Walking outside, moderate sun exposure. For me, another one is just enjoying nature. I guess I didn't really feel, growing up, the amount of hiking things we were doing, I kind of took that for granted. And, working in a corporate world for a while, I kind of got away from that and kind of trying to get back into that. But that nature, just something about being in nature calms me. Music doesn't impact me, but some people, they just like music that can calm them. Yoga, I think it falls along the lines of meditation a little bit. Swimming, hot sauna. I find that that relaxes me too. And then just I'll call it adult rec sports. Just getting together with a volleyball league, or something like that, indoor soccer group. I know I've mentioned meditation a couple of times. I'm not going to admit that I'm good at it. As a matter of fact, I still struggle with meditation a lot. It's definitely something that struggles me. But some of the other things I think that you need to think about is that getting out in nature is maybe one side of that coin, but the other side is the balance of your exercise. I know I spent a lot of time talking about exercise in one of my examples, but I think that we get ourselves into a position sometimes where we don't realize that the lack of exercise can sometimes maybe decrease our energy levels. And that's counterintuitive for some people. I'm so exhausted, I can't exercise. But if I could just convince them, if you would just get off the couch and then go for a walk around your neighborhood, you might find that you actually have more energy. So when we talk about exercise, I know my examples were around lifting weights and maybe a little sprinting, and that may be intimidating to you, but you can find your mix. I mean, I think if I was going to lump them into that one of low intensity play, you may find that that's all you need for cardio. Or you might if you want to build muscle, you may want to look at strength training. But finding that mix that impacts you, it's different for each person. And again, I'm going to harp back on a comment I made earlier about the genes, is you'll be surprised that some of those are things that you just get, your body just handles better. So some people have more type 2 muscle fiber, so they may like cardio better than you. And just because the person next to you loves to run doesn't mean you're a good runner. You may not like to run. So it's not just finding the mix that works for you, it's also finding the type that works for you. Remember that if you find you continue to increase your stress, and you find, oh, wait, now I started this exercise to decrease my stress, and now I'm finding I'm more stressed, then you just need to back that off and find out a different mix for you. So going back to the coach, whether you look for an accountability partner or a coach, I think just having somebody on the outside, and maybe it's your wife or husband, your significant other. My personal journey, I've found that sometimes I don't realize stress is kind of sneaking in. I may start to get short with the kids. I may find that I am not paying attention in meetings. I'm not prepared to, give this talk. All those are all triggers that sometimes somebody else can maybe let you in early. John, you're starting to get a little short with the kids. I know that my wife has probably said that to me before. But that kind of coach outside look can help you kind of see your limits a little better. And I don't want to say, it's not necessarily self-talk, but it's being more self-aware. Sometimes, for me anyway, especially revolving around this topic, once somebody brought that to my attention, I was able to be more self-aware and understand a little bit easier of why I got to that. So I'll take the example of the children. Just my wife saying, "Hey, you're a little short with the kids tonight. What's going on?" And I can kind of say, "Ooh, looking back, you're probably right. I've got some stuff at work. Lots of critical issues I'm working on. That then the next time I start to realize it better. So the more you can find an accountability partner or coach to help you identify those things, the easier it's going to be for you to be a little more self-aware." So I just want to, does anybody have any comments or maybe, just information that they've found that's revolving around trying to find the right stress sweet spot for them? No questions today. No input.
Yeah. Hey, this is Jolene, and I can never always keep my mouth shut. So, as you were talking through, so one of the examples that I have that for my stress, and this has zero to do with work or family, quite honestly, but so I have always wanted a pool. Last year, I decided I was getting a pool, regardless of everybody telling me how much work they were. And so once I got the pool, I did realize that it was a little bit more work than I had thought that it was going to be. And so I did find myself getting stressed out that I had all of this work to do with the pool, plus I had to keep the house up and, do all of the cooking. And so that's really when I looked at doing my cooking all in one day so that I did not have to drag that out each day. And I actually hired somebody to come in and clean my house once a week during the summer months, just because that was something that I wanted so badly that I was not willing to compromise my pool and my pool time in order to make sure that my house was clean. And so I have found, though, with all of that, that's actually a stress reliever for me. My husband has mentioned numerous times to get automated pool cleaners and all of this, and I don't want to, because when I come home from work, the first thing that I do is go get in the pool. And even though I am cleaning it and doing things that other people would consider a chore, it's time alone. There's nobody out there with me. I don't have to talk to anybody. I don't have a phone, and I really de-stress. And I have a hard time sleeping. So I have found that relaxes me, and I don't know if it does help me sleep, but I think it does. So I guess that's all that matters. But, just simple things like that. I know that a lot of us stress over cleaning the house, and especially people with children.
I'd love to dig in if you don't mind. So let's take it in two pieces. So let's talk about the pool. So I love that you mentioned the pool is something, because from a toter, if you look at it from a specific view, that pool actually decreases your stress because you're enjoying it, you're relaxing, and then you're identifying the work that goes along with it, and you're saying that still is something that I want to do. So you've looked at the pieces of that particular, in this case, pool, and said, you know what, almost cleaning it's like it's my mini meditation or my mini stress relief piece. It's kind of calming for me, instant gratification. I see the clear water, and then I can enjoy it that much more. And I think that is something that you kind of find as you go along. So when it got to the other point of house cleaning, how did you kind of determine that of the things that you need to do, the workload wise, that you couldn't handle, which pieces you were going to outsource? How did you identify that it was cleaning your house?
To be honest, it really did come down to I enjoy the pool, and even though it's still cleaning, it's still, work that I had to do. I got enjoyment out of that, and to be honest, there's nothing about cleaning my house that I enjoy. So, it was one of those things. It has to be done, but I just didn't get any enjoyment out of it. So it was a very easy decision for me. And it wasn't that I could just push it off on my husband either, right? Because we both share everything. So those pieces for me, it was my piece, and I just decided to have someone else come in and do that for me.
Yeah, when it comes to cleaning the house, I 100% agree with the statement that there is no enjoyment there. And I look at it as a couple of different folds. So I too have somebody that comes and cleans the house every 2 weeks. And I definitely think that decreases my overall stress. I think it's very much worth the investment for me personally. It also gives me trigger points to maybe I'm going to call it get rid of the clutter. So I think we can all, kind of sympathize with the fact that as mail comes in, it kind of lands in this corner of my area. And as this happens, we tend to put all the shoes kind of piped in a heap, in a heap next to the door, and all those things. And it kind of builds in a time that I know the day before the person's coming to clean the house, that straightening piece gives me a cadence and trigger point that just the fact that I have to do that helps me be accountable for keeping my house at least, a decent amount of picked up so that it can be cleaned. And then because I only do it every other week, I still do cleaning some, just less deep cleaning. So you can kind of, turn that screw back and forth to say, having somebody come once a week versus once a month, and where that fits into your life. It's all a cost benefit analysis. And when it comes right down to it, you've got to look at those goals and try to figure out which one is good for you, because relaxation needs to be something that you plan and do. Otherwise, you'll find yourself constantly in that high stress piece. So those are two fantastic examples. Does anybody else have anything that they want to share? I know we only have 2 minutes left. So I just want to finish on a couple of points. It's very easy to shake your head, nod, and say yes. It's a lot harder to take the time. So I challenge you, let's say once a week, take a look at your overall stresses, and there's going to be things that you don't think about. And when you find them, just maybe write them down and or figure out how you're going to tackle them. I can guarantee you that cleaning the house wasn't something that I figured out right away. I found the sweet spot every other week. But other things that you don't realize are consuming your psyche. If you find the mail piling up in a spot in your kitchen every day, I did something drastic. I have all my mail go to my P.O. box, all my bills, everything, and I honestly only go every other week. So I found that to me, getting junk mail and all that crap is just kind of annoying. So it's either junk mail anymore, Netflix or, or a bill. So I just completely got rid of all that, sent it to my P.O. box, and then every other week I look at it, and it's just a mass where I pocketed that stuff all together, throw all the junk mail away, pay all my bills, done, and then just process that all at one big chunk. So you'd be surprised once you start to identify that and looking at your overall stress. Take a look at that low-hanging fruit and find out, the ones that you can tackle with the least amount of effort. You'll be surprised at just, you take one off and then one off and then one off, and then pretty soon you've pulled it back into your sweet spot. So hope you enjoyed it. I know it's a little off or slightly off topic. I did relate it a little bit to the working out, because I think working out is what kind of made me a little more self-aware of my overall stress curve or worry curve, whatever you want to call it. But I do think that it's something that will overarching improve your health once you can start to look at it from a little bit higher level. And just that weekly review, I know I don't always do it, but I do try to do that weekly review where I can think of, well, where the heck did all the time go this week? What are those things that I can try to figure out how to tweak and or change my process to try to pull it in? And I think all those things have definitely overarchingly improved my life. So if you want to find more information, we are slowly but surely moving everything over. There's a YouTube channel. Everything, all the social media and everything is Ketonian Korner. So actually, do you, Jolene, want to give us the full rundown on all the social media and everything?
Sure. So just to conclude, thanks, John, for that, because I think this will be very helpful, and it does tie into overall health, fitness, and your nutrition as well. As you mentioned, the cortisol, and that is impactful to different things. So thank you guys for joining another episode of Ketonian Korner. You can reach us at our website, KetonianKorner.com. You can reach us through our email, KetonianKorner at gmail.com. We also are on Facebook under Ketonian Korner. We have a Twitter account, we have Instagram, and we also now have the YouTube, as John mentioned. So we're reachable, very, very easy. So go out there, check us out, and give us some feedback.
Yeah, and not only, I know social media and all that stuff is just like another tool. So we just kind of try to put it everywhere so it's where it's convenient for you. But bring us topics. We really want to make this something where we all improve. So if you're struggling with something, if you look at that piece of stress in your life and you don't know how to pull it in, just throw it out there as a topic. Drop us an email and say, hey, you know what? That house cleaning thing was really interesting. And then that's just an example, but whatever your problem is, say, hey, can we just have an open discussion about X? We're not opposed to that. Really, we're all just trying to share what's worked for us and what hasn't. The more we can make this a community, the more I think we can all grow. And I think I mentioned it before, if we can just get 1% better every time, overarching that 1%, that just gets pretty exponential.
Thanks for listening. For more details, head over to www.smallprimalhabits.com.